Welcome back, everybody. Our next speakers in this morning's programme are Richard Angus, Head of the Education Partnership at MyTutor, and Jayne Neal, who is Assistant Head Teacher at King Edward VI Camp Hill School for Girls. I know that there's a lot of anticipation for this presentation, so I'll pass over to you, and I look forward to hearing about your tutoring programme.
Thanks very much, Carol, and thank you everyone for joining. Let me just share my screen quickly. I hope everyone's well, or as well as you could be at the moment, that the tag process went as well as possible, and that you're looking forward to a well-deserved rest in a week or two's time. So this morning, we've got 25 minutes or so. I think that in the main, what we're looking to do is focus on some practical tips for anyone who has been involved with tuition this year or previously, particularly the National Tutoring Programme. That became available through government subsidy due to everything that's gone on in the last year or so. But we've been working with schools with tuition for a long time. A lot of schools have come to us for the first time this year due to the nature of this government subsidised programme. What you can do in this way, if you haven't with us before, you can hopefully learn some top tips from Jayne, who'll be speaking with us this morning, who can actually share some practical stuff from someone who's been there, in that first year, and has got a load of learnings that sometimes you can only learn from that first year, but also can pass on to you so that you can take them best you can into whatever you choose to do next year, in however way you might want to do it. So it's essentially what we wish we'd known about the NTP, taking some best practice into next year. So in terms of meeting the speakers, I mentioned Jayne. It's Jayne Neal, and she's Assistant Head Teacher at King Edward, the 6th Camp Hill School for Girls. Jayne's been involved really heavily with all aspects of remote learning. She's leading on teaching and learning, but also looking at things like school-wide intervention programs for this year. So you can imagine there's so much to that role that was in this year, and hopefully loads that Jayne's going to have to take away going into the next year, which hopefully you'll hope to be a bit more normal. My name is Richard. I'm Head of Education Partnerships here at MyTutor. I've been here for about 3 or so years now, so it's been different every year, which I guess has been part of the fun. So what I'll do first and foremost is give you a very brief introduction to the National Tutoring Programme and MyTutor and how it all works. And then I'll pass over to Jayne to share best practice tips and tricks and everything else. We'll have 5 minutes at the end for Q&A. So do pop chat into the swap cards questions piece on there. And if we can't get to all of them, we'll try and get in contact with you separately as well. And we'll make sure that we found you. So if you've got anything for me or Jayne, I'm sure we'll be happy to answer that outside of the session. So I guess why we're here, I think, is fairly self-explanatory. It's been one heck of a year, and tuition. More and more schools have found tuition to be a source of support during this time. I think we used to work with around 450 schools. We work with about 650 now. So many have already used tuition in the past as part of their intervention strategies, but with the gap being what it's been over the last, it's going to impact beyond this, but the last couple of years, the National Tutoring Programme has come into being. So to give you a little bit of a sense of who we are and what we do, MyTutor is an online tuition platform. It's designed to reinforce classwork, not replace anything that teachers do at all. It's reinforcing, improving confidence, and raising attainment. So what do? Well, we work with secondary school at the moment, and there are great providers in primary if that's of interest as well. And we can point you in their direction. We work with key stage 3 to 5 students, and we match them with top university tutors in core subjects focused on disadvantaged students. So Pupil Premium's always been the vast majority of what we've done. The National Tutoring Programme's opened it out a little bit wider than that, but still, and we know that Pupil Premium doesn't necessarily speak to all levels of disadvantage that exist within a school, but it's not been a bad proxy, and often, it's been the focus of who we've worked with. And we've always been online. So I suppose that's an important note, is that we're online to meet the demands of scale. The reason we do it is it means you can get the right tutor regardless of your location. it can fit into your schedule without having to bring lots and lots of people in and out of school all the time. And it can be much more flexible to what you need. We've always been online, so it's not something that's new, and we've had to build it for this year. And this is a little bit of, we've got an impact report that we're really happy to share. We measure this every year. We look at our students, their progress they make in a MyTutor subject versus the subjects that they didn't take MyTutor in. What we can see consecutively year on year is that students make about a grade of progress, which for the sort of students that we're trying to tackle and support can make a really profound difference at the end of their time with us. Our tutors are all inspiring role models studying at UK universities. So the idea for that is that they all have to have top grades. Of course, that goes without saying. They have interviews. We make sure that they're ready, and then we watch them for their first few lessons to make sure they're delivering the right content. But when you get that out of there, you get all the other benefits of their age. So they've got recent exam experience. They are at university, or they're in a different place. So it's sort of, being able to see something that's slightly different to perhaps what a student might be used to. And they're able to reinforce things from another angle, a safe place to ask questions that perhaps they didn't feel secure asking in a larger group in a school environment. This is a little bit of what the sessions look like. They're live. They're either 1-to-1 or 3-to-1 in their nature in terms of the number of students to a tutor. They're subject specific, and you've got this big interactive whiteboard. The idea is it's not a sort of video tutorial or anything. The idea is that both the student and the tutor can edit things, speak, and write stuff on there. It's supposed to be an interactive session. Just very quickly on the NTP, the National Tutoring Programme, if you're not already aware of it, it's a government subsidised programme, and essentially they cover off about 70% of the price of tuition, which essentially nets out at about £5 per hour per student for MyTutor for tuition. So it's, we'll come on to best practice for how to really run it well, but in essence, it's a very heavily subsidised tuition programme. It's running again next year as it did this year, and we expect all partners to be approved and re-approved by August. And I'm happy to give you some more detail on that, but we helped about 30,000 students on the programme this year. So we've got experience with it this year, and looking forward to being involved again next. But that's a bit of detail on ours. I think the bulk of this conversation was very much to hear from Jayne in terms of her experiences running tuition in real life at a school and sort of best practice from there. So I think with that in mind, I'd love to introduce Jayne, get to say hello and talk through the presentation that you prepared for us today.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Okay, I'll just give you a very brief sort of history really of how we became involved with MyTutor. We'd initially put in place some face-to-face tutoring with tutors that we'd sort of brought into school to work with students in years 11 and 12 and 13. But that didn't really meet the full need that we had in wanting to support students back in the autumn term and into sort of the spring term as well. And I think, we just had that sort of difficulty of, taking students out of timetabled lessons and, during the school day. So it was another school in our Academy Trust who had partnered with MyTutor and were really pleased with the provision and felt it was working very well for their students. So that's how we sort of came to sort of look at it and sort of think about how this could really, really work for us as well. So then we set up a programme with MyTutor offering support to 23 Year 13 students and 60 Year 11 students. They were our priority year groups for that spring term, and we sort of targeted them very carefully, very closely from January to May, just before they sort of stood down. Following that, we are now just coming towards the end of our 5-week Year 10 programme, where we've offered online tuition to 60 Year 10 students. So they've committed to 2 hourly slots a week for 5 weeks, and that's gone incredibly well. And the feedback from students and parents and teachers who've been involved in that has been really fantastic. It's a real positive way to end this academic year. And we wanted to put that in place for Year 10 at this point in the school year as a way of sort of, bridging into them going forward as our Year 11 cohort next year. So that's how we've been sort of partnering with MyTutor this year. I thought I would now just talk to you a little bit about what I've learned really about selecting the right students. I think first and foremostly, it's absolutely imperative that you liaise with subject leaders and the departments that you are going to be, sort of targeting for support. So your English department, your maths, your sciences, whatever. And I think really it's so important to just have an idea of the fact that this is, so it can be, setting up your program can be quite time consuming, but that will absolutely pay dividends if you get your students right. And that you've got everybody on board in terms of your heads of department and the teachers, and that it's that sort of real triangulated sort of process really. And I think again, we all know how busy middle leaders and classroom teachers are, but they need to have the time to be able to sort of look at data, to discuss in their teams which are the students who are most in need, but also which are the students who are absolutely going to engage with the commitments that is involved with the MyTutor programme. Because again, I think that's one thing that we found, that we sort of had selected certain students who we thought, well, we'll give them the opportunity, but sort of 2 to 3 weeks in, it was just really obvious for all sorts of reasons that those students just weren't on board with the programme. Whereas I think when we sort of came to sort out our Year 10 programme later on in this academic year, we sort of came with a sort of a wiser hat on really, and were a bit more sort of attuned to which students, that this would work for really. I think as well, you need to set up a spreadsheet to ensure that your departments aren't all selecting the same students, because I think that was one of the things that I found, is that, the students at the English department were selecting, the maths department wanted, physics wanted them, and so on. And obviously, we only sort of can offer one subject per student. We wanted to sort of have a real sort of range of students being offered the support, and also you don't want the same students sort of in MyTutor every night of the week really. So I think again, it's just that logistical and strategic pulling together really of which students are going into which subject, and that all of your heads of department and your teachers are in agreement with that, and you're sort of getting the best fit really for the programme. I think as well, it's really important to consider your overall purpose, and think about who it is that you're targeting. So we targeted the following. So we did look at our tail end students, the ones who were right at the bottom of our tracking sheets. And obviously, again, we try to sort of put as much support in for those students as we possibly could, and sort of to match it to which subject was most pertinent for those students. We thought very carefully about our disadvantaged students. Obviously, we wanted to sort of put the funding into as many of those students as possible. But we did have, when we do have a number of our disadvantaged students who were doing superbly in terms of their academics, and we felt it wasn't appropriate for those students to be involved in the programme. We also thought about our students who, for various reasons, had disengaged during lockdown 1, so there were some significant knowledge and learning gaps there. So we absolutely wanted to sort of make it very sort of bespoke to those students. We were thinking about students who, looking at the data, we could see that they were way off their data targets, and obviously they needed support. They needed some really impactful intervention to try and sort of get them working towards their target. We also, and I was very sort of passionate about this, that I wanted to sort of put support in place to those students who had continued to work well during lockdown, but who were sort of lacking in academic competence really. So the students who had sort of been sort of consistently doing the work, but who just lacked that sort of sense of self-belief, that confidence, and we just thought that this opportunity would really be beneficial for those students. And then we also had in there as well some students whose data showed, along with teacher judgments, that they were sort of on the cusp of a grade, and who we felt that this opportunity and this extra branch of support would really help them sort of move to their next sort of grade, and again move towards their target. So lots and lots of different types of students, lots of reasons to involve students in the programme. And again, you know, you will know your own context and you'll know your own sort of principles behind wanting to do this. Okay. In terms of setting up your programme, lots of advice here. Again, I think the one thing I do want to emphasise is that importance of putting aside, you know, a number of weeks to actually get this set up and, you know, in the best place possible for you so that it runs as smoothly as it possibly can from the outset. I would say at least 3 weeks of setup time, and I think, you know, initially I had underestimated how long it was going to take for me to get this up and running. And I think firstly, you know, the first time I was doing this, it was all new to me. And I think, you know, when I came to sort of set up the Year 10 programme, it was, you know, much more sort of familiar. But I think, you know, you absolutely need to just be aware that, you know, the information gathering in terms of liaising with departments and individual teachers, the gathering of all of that information, and then the inputting it into the MyTutor spreadsheet, because of course MyTutor does actually need quite a lot of information so that they can sort of fit the right tutor with the right students, that the tutors have the information about the students in advance of the programme. All of that, you know, all of that gathering of information, you know, is as we know, time consuming, and then you have to sort of input it all into sort of quite a mammoth spreadsheet for MyTutor so that they can put the best programme in place for your students. But all of that, as I say, does take time. And the other thing I would absolutely advocate is that departments do speak to the selected students. And I think, you know, in hindsight, that didn't happen here consistently with the first time we did our Year 11 and 13 programme. So, you know, departments were sort of sending names of students to me, and I'd sort of set up a sort of a Google Doc, and they were sort of putting their reasons as to why they'd sort of put these students down and why they'd nominated them. But then they didn't always have that conversation with the students. And so then I had students coming to me or emailing me, panicking and distressed, or, you know, just bemused really as to why they'd been put forward for this programme, what it was all about, etc. So I think, you know, it's about that really sort of smooth, consistent communication. And I think it absolutely does need to come from their teachers, from their departments in the first instance, before you know, the person who is in your school who is in charge of the programme and overseeing it, you know, starts to sort of put the wheels in motion. Really, I think that you know, that whole reassuring and informative conversation absolutely needs to come from teachers and heads of departments. The other thing I would also say is that the templates provided by MyTutor are really helpful. You do get an awful lot of admin support, but again, I think, you know, it's always good to sort of adapt those for your own context, but, you know, don't feel that you're starting off from scratch and having to create letters and information leaflets, etc., because so much of that is there for you, and it's you know, a really great helpful resource of those sorts of things to sort of get you started with communicating with parents and the students themselves. Just sort of coupled with that, one of the other things I would recommend that you do, which is a great time saver, I think, is you can create your own sort of short explanatory video which can go alongside the letter that you might email out to parents. I think that's just a really nice touch. It's more personal. It sort of takes away some of the more sort of corporate aspects, you know, because I know MyTutor do, you know, have got sort of some of their own sort of little videos that you can share with parents. But I think if you've got one, you know, as the friendly face of the school, you're talking about, you know, why your school has opted to sort of get involved with MyTutor, what you want to get from it. I think that's just, you know, sort of quite reassuring for parents really, and for students as well. I think the next point that I would say is an absolute essential, and I've sort of learned sort of the hard way really, is the essentiality of really good and consistent admin support. You know, as Richard said, you know, I'm an assistant head. I'm in the first year of assistant headship this year, so it's been a bit of a baptism of fire, finding myself in charge of remote learning, but also whole school intervention and pupil premium. And I think, you know, aside from that, just the magnitude of trying to set up the programme, but more so it's the sort of the daily monitoring and the evaluation of it. To do it right, you cannot do it all on your own, because if you try to do that, you'll end up doing nothing else. Because if you're trying to keep tabs on 60 students, you know, plus your 13s or however many students you've got involved in the programme, you know, just sort of, you know, on a daily basis, if you're sort of monitoring their attendance at the sessions, and then having to chase up any sort of reprobates who haven't been on a session and finding out why, etc. You know, it's really sort of quite time consuming. So I think, you know, if you are a middle leader or you're a senior leader in a school, you absolutely need to have a person or a team of people who are going to come on board with you and take some ownership of that, so that you can have the, you know, oversee it, but you're not sort of doing the sort of the minutiae of the admin of that, because it's to do it properly. As I say, I think, you know, you absolutely need to know the impact that it's having on students, but that takes a lot of time, so you need some extra bodies to help you with that. I think the other thing I would also say as well, really, really important, is to meet with the students face to face, if possible. We weren't able to do that because we started our MyTutor programme in year 11 with year 11 and 13 back in January, which of course we've gone into lockdown. So we were sort of doing remote meets with our MyTutors. But this time with the year 10, I had groups of them in the hall, and that was just really, really great in terms of being able to reassure them, to tell them personally about the programme, and it just helped to demystify it, I think, for them, and deal with any FAQs, give them some reassurance, and I think, you know, really sort of promote it to them as this is a really valuable opportunity. But it also, I think, allowed me to establish some ground rules for them, that, you know, this isn't an opt-in, opt-out, and actually if you next week if you don't fancy it, you can sort of not turn up to your session. You know, I think certainly this time round with the year 10, I was much firmer in terms of, you know, there's a lot of money being invested in you. We absolutely want you to benefit from this, but you have to commit from the outset. And again, you know, one of the things I've been doing in the mornings is going around the year 10 forms and just chatting to the students, asking them about their sessions the previous evening, how was it, and then, you know, just having conversations with them so that they know that they're going to be sort of checked up on rather, and if they haven't been on a session, that they're going to see me in the morning and I'm going to be asking why. So I think, you know, that's really important to have that consistency. I also have set up an email address just for the year 10 MyTutor lot as well, and that's been brilliant in terms of keeping that sort of smooth communication. So if they have had a problem, or they want to pass on anything about a session, it comes directly to that email address and doesn't get sort of lost in my other work emails, because we all know how busy and traffic laden they can be at times. And finally, just here in terms of advice, setting up your programme, I would certainly say have a bank of reserve students who are briefed about the programme, that they understand completely what it is, and they understand that they are on the reserve list, if you like. And that should a place become available, you know, over the course of the programme, that they would be happy to go in, you know, at sort of quite short notice and take up that place. And that was something that we certainly did with the year 11 and year 13 programme back in the spring term, because, you know, we did have a few students who, you know, had sort of not attended for sort of 2 to 3 sessions, and that was our sort of line really. We said, well, you know, after that we're not going to sort of keep them on the programme because it's a waste of money, it's a waste of an opportunity. So we did sort of quickly sort of swap them in, but again, if you've got that list of students ready to go, that saves you having to keep going back to departments, sort of finding you know, additional students, etc. So you know, again, it's about that sort of, you know, being organised and having that information in advance. And in terms of once you've got going with your programme and you want to sort of keep supporting your students, obviously, through the process and monitoring their engagement, one of the things that has been really impactful for us with our year 10 programme, and is certainly something that we will implement the autumn term with year 11 and 13 is considering, or certainly offering, students the opportunity for them to complete their sessions in school. And what we sort of learned, I think, really from the year 11 programme particularly, and as I say, we were in lockdown, so we didn't really have much choice. That they were all completing their sessions at home initially up until March. But again, that did, for all sorts of contextual reasons, mean that some students just weren't engaging as consistently as we had hoped, due to technical issues, lots of children being at home, siblings, etc. It just very often, the conditions aren't ideal. So this time around, we offered all of our 60 year 10s the opportunity to stay in school and to start their sessions at 4 o'clock, as opposed to going home and starting at 5:30 or 6 or whatever. We also identified certain students who we just knew, home circumstances, or who had been particularly disengaged during the lockdowns, and said, you're going to be involved in the programme and you are staying in school to do it at 4 o'clock. The incentive for that is we give them a little bit of tea and a drink and a bit of chill out time before. That goes down really well. They are going through packets of chocolate biscuits, but it's really working. And I was talking to Richard yesterday, and I was saying that we've even had students who, when we had our year 10 exams a couple of weeks ago, and if they sort of had finished their exam at midday, they were going home, but then coming back into school to complete their MyTutor session. And I think that just the structure that it gives them. And just the whole sort of reassurance, I think, of having a teacher there as well. They're not at home in a bedroom or a kitchen with lots of other family members around. I think just that sort of business-like atmosphere of the school library and their headset and so forth, it just really works for our students. So we will be offering that again, as I say, to year 11 going forwards, and even the sixth form. I think, again, what I would say to you is make really good use of the daily monitoring facility on the MyTutor website, so you can see at a really quick glance which students attended their sessions the day before, and obviously you can act on that really quickly. And I think the key is that you or your team, hopefully of admin support, will be able to chase up and act on that poor engagement really quickly, because of course we all know that if it's not acted upon, then it can just be a bit of a sliding cycle, really. And one of the things that I've also done this year is to make sure that any communication about poor engagement is that parents are copied into that as their form tutor and their subject tutor as well, so that everybody is informed, and that it's not just me as the programme leader who was talking to that student about the MyTutor and their lack of engagement. Everybody is encouraging, supporting, but very much reinforcing that message of you absolutely have to be committed to this. Just sort of coupled with that, we have a policy here that if a student misses 2 sessions in a row, they should be removed from the programme. We just have a bit of a zero tolerance on that, because we just feel this is there's so much money being invested in this. It's such a valuable opportunity, and there is so much need, and so we absolutely don't want students squandering this opportunity, and so we do sort of really reinforce to them and the importance of it, the value of it, and how lucky they are to have this opportunity. It sounds quite draconian, I hope it doesn't, but one of the things we also do, of course, is to have lots and lots of praise and recognition of the student commitment. And again, when I was chatting to my tutor about the possibility of setting up the year 10 programme, just after Easter, and they were talking to me about how, oh well, yes, it's 2 hours a week, and I was thinking, my goodness, that's a lot for sort of 14, 15-year-olds to commit to. But actually, it's been fantastic. And, one of the things that we have really done to sort of keep those students motivated is lots of praise. So praise emails going to parents and to the students. Again, making sure that the form tutors are saying, fantastic, in the mornings, you're doing really well. We're really proud of you. We've had, certificates of, students sort of midway through the programme, you're on 100%. And one of the things we've also got as a sort of a little incentive is for all students who by the end of the programme who have stayed on 100% attendance, all of their sessions are being entered into a prize draw for a £25 Amazon voucher, and we'll do little other additional prizes for other students as well who've just really risen to the challenge and who have engaged throughout the programme. And I think, again, one of the things that we would also recommend for you to do is to encourage students to communicate any difficulties or just their experiences with the programme, which is, again, linking back to what I said about setting up a sort of a designated email address where they can, they know that is the way that they can talk to you and let you know if something hasn't gone wrong or hasn't gone right. I mean, the one problem that I have found is that, if a student has chosen to do their session at, I don't know, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night at home, and then they're emailing you to say, I can't get in the lesson space. There's very little that you as the teacher can do, and I have sort of conveyed that to them. But I said, persevere. But the students, to be fair, are very good at knowing how to sort of log out, log back in, and to sort of troubleshoot that way. But one of the things I would also say is that the support from MyTutor at those times has been fantastic. There is always somebody available on the phone. Emails are responded to really, really quickly. If we've had instances where a lesson for some technical reason hasn't been able to take place, then that lesson has been added on to the end of the programme so that the student doesn't miss out on learning time.
Jane, can I just say one more minute, please,
yes,
so that we can have a little bit of time for a couple of questions?
Yes, I'm just rounding up now. I think, again, just my last point really is just to, and I'm sure you would do this anyway, but to do a real sort of thorough summative evaluation at the end of the programme to sort of gather pupil feedback, and I have fed that back to my tutor as well when I've had evaluation comments from year 11 and year 13, because I can, that really does help you as the programme coordinator in your school to think about what works, what doesn't work in your context. But also my tutor have been so welcoming of all of that feedback as well. And just on my next slide, you will see that, here is just a selection of some of the comments from students. And I think, the things that have sort of really heartened me and made it all worthwhile really is the fact that students have gained in academic confidence, their motivation for learning, the feeling that they've got that extra arm of support really, particularly as they were sort of working towards the teacher assessment grades, that they didn't feel that, okay, if they hadn't engaged or they'd lost learning during the lockdowns, that suddenly, it all was not lost, that there was a way of catching up and having that sort of support either in a one-to-one or in a small group with the year 11 programme. And I think for so many students, just having that designated hour a week or 2 hours a week, depending on the programme, just gave them a real sort of important sense of structure and a sense of that this is attainable, we can do this. So all in all, our experience has been really positive, and I just hope that's been helpful for you as you contemplate going forwards.
Sounds like it has been a very positive experience indeed. Thank you very much, Jane and Richard. We are running a little bit over time now, so perhaps we'll just have one question if that's okay, and then you'll be able to catch up with the other questions that are in the chat. And I noticed that some of them have been answered as we've been going along anyway. I think perhaps the first question that came in was, what safeguarding measures are in place to protect both the students and the tutors?
And that's probably
happening sort of in the evenings, isn't it?
I think it's a good question, and I can make a little video of the extra questions and answers if that's useful to sort of share some of those bits and pieces. And thanks very much, Jane, for the presentation. So first of all, we would say that most of our lessons still take place at the end of the school day, but before students go home. So in that moment that Jane said, still in that classroom environment. There's a lot of reasons why it's really beneficial, but we've just, more and more people have discovered that for select students, doing it at home works really well. To the safeguarding point, this is really important. So there's three main things I think are probably worth taking away. We have to be checked for safeguarding. Obviously, we would never be able to do this if we weren't rigorously checked on that side. But first of all, every tutor has to have an enhanced DBS check, but that's sort of table stakes. You'd expect that, right? The second one is that the student and tutor don't know each other they only know each other on a first name basis. So they don't know where they go to school or university. They also don't have their contact details or anything like that available. They only join and see each other in the lesson space and then they depart. Probably the most important thing though, apart from the fact that we have a full escalation framework and everything, I think someone even mentioned about how tutors have escalated things, and that's really important to note. Every session's recorded, and it's recorded for 30 days. So that's so that student can go back and re-watch those sessions and revise for them, which they don't find useful until exams, and then they suddenly find useful. But also, it helps us to make sure that we can corroborate anything that's flagged up on either side where those sort of things come together. And that's why we have our dedicated safeguarding team to take care of that. And so those three things are the way that in which we're really secure. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much, Richard. And as I said, there are a few questions in the in the live discussion, and that perhaps you could take a look. But that just leaves me to say thank you very much on behalf of everybody for your really interesting talk.